Hi, I'm Jan Cooperthwaite with Project Gowan Pamphlet. Now you're probably wondering what Project Gowan Pamphlet is all about. Well, it's a research project that I began in 2005 in order to learn more about Gowan Pamphlet. Gowan is one of those unsung African American heroes whose contributions to history is only now just being recognized. So what makes Gowan so special, you might ask? First and foremost, he founded a church during the Revolutionary War in Williamsburg that still exists today in the 21st century. Secondly, at the time this all occurred, Gowan Pamphlet was a slave.
Afterwards, Gowan, who called himself Gowan Pamphlet, moved from Middlesex, where he had been preaching for some time. Robert Baylor Semple.
Based on my research, Gowan Pamphlet was born in Virginia sometime around 1748 to an enslaved woman. Virginia's law concerning slavery was clear. The offspring of slaves were born slaves and they died slaves. Manumission was possible, but it was rarely allowed, and that law probably would have remained unchanged had it not been for the Revolutionary War. Thousands of slaves fought for the Patriots' cause, and as it turns out, their efforts did not go unnoticed. When the war ended and an era of good feeling permeated Virginia, Quakers, Methodists, and Baptists thought it the perfect time to petition the Virginia legislature for a change to the manumission law. That change came in 1782. The new manumission law allowed slave owners to free their slaves under the most liberal of conditions. And as it turns out, Gowan Pamphlet met those conditions because in 1793, his owner, David Miller, freed him. That must have been a day of jubilation for this Baptist preacher. However, jubilation did not end with that, because you see, more was to come. Before a month would pass, Gowan Pamphlet would become the first African American preacher in Virginia to have his church formally recognized. In October 1793, Gowan applied to America's largest Baptist association, the Dover Association of Virginia, for membership of his church. This decision took a gigantic leap of faith on his part. He had already been rejected once by them, and if the church was accepted, it would be the first African American church invited into this august body. Well, Gowan's church certainly qualified for admission. It had operated continuously for 12 years since its formal constitution in 1781. And by 1793, it counted 200 members in its congregation. So based on these facts, it seemed reasonable that acceptance was at hand. However, the possibility of another rejection was very high. The Dover's membership consisted mostly of slave owners, and it was their belief that African Americans were incapable of supporting a well-ordered regular Baptist church. Gowan applied anyway, knowing that this time the conditions were different. He was no longer a slave in 1793. So you can see, I can picture him there entering the assembly hall, requesting admittance for his congregation, producing the all-important church book that the association really wanted, and retrieving his manumission paper, all the while listening to the groans and jeers from the fellow Baptist ministers who had rejected him just 2 years before.
The Baptist Church of Black People at Williamsburg, agreeably to their request, was received into this association, as they could not have done better in their circumstances than they have.
Apparently, Gowan's new freedom paper was his ticket to Dover membership. The Dover's minutes give just a hint to the difficulties he had faced. However, their acceptance was acknowledgment of Gowan's commitment to bringing God's word to the free and enslaved African Americans of Williamsburg. It's easy to forget that Gowan lived in a slave-owning society where 300,000 men, women, and children lived in chains, and where advancement and opportunity was limited by skin color. Gowan didn't let these restrictions stop him. He was free, and as a free person, he could negotiate contracts on his own personal property, and even buy real estate. And that's just what he did, because in 1805, Gowan Pamphlet purchased 15 acres in James City County, and he later built a house there to live in. And later that same year, 1805, he bought a lot on Nassau Street in Williamsburg. On this property, he constructed a meeting house, and his congregation continued to meet on that site for over 150 years. At the height of slavery, it was a brave African American who would venture beyond the safety of community. Traveling exposed them to menacing slave hunters and sheriffs who thought all persons of color were runaway slaves. It was not at all uncommon for free African Americans to be arrested, jailed, and even re-enslaved. Now, despite these dangers, Gowan regularly attended the Dover's annual meetings. These often took place more than 100 miles or more from Williamsburg. So you see, to my way of thinking, this shows the lengths to which Gowan Pamphlet would go to support his congregation. Gowan's dedication to spreading the gospel extended to his commitment to building congregations beyond the environs of Williamsburg. Gowan and fellow minister Israel Kemp established a Baptist congregation in Yorktown, Virginia, on a lot that Kemp purchased in 1799. Now, I find their choice of location ironic. Here were these two formerly enslaved Baptist preachers delivering the message of hope and freedom and peace to enslaved African Americans in the same town that 20 years before had seen the culmination of America's dream for independence and freedom from British tyranny. When I started this project years ago, I hoped to discover more about Gowan Pamphlet than was already known. I had hoped to find letters, diaries, and journals that mentioned Gowan Pamphlet. I even prayed to find the document treasure trove that I knew existed somewhere, that I hoped would include his autobiography, obituary, birth record, manumission certificate, or even the writ ordering his arrest for holding illegal religious meetings. This, of course, was wishful thinking. That's not how it turned out. Those records just never turned up. I'm not saying they don't exist. I'm just saying I have not found them yet. But wishful thinking aside, from the start, I intended to find Gowan Pamphlet using a formal investigative technique known as lateral research. Now, this technique involves investigating the friends, family, and associates of the target of interest, and in this case, it was Gowan Pamphlet. It's very much like the rail fences running through Virginia at the time. People were interconnected like those fence rails are to one to another. And that's why I investigated his owners, Jane Vobe and David Miller, and his ministerial associates such as Israel Kemp, Jacob Bishop, and even Joseph Meade. I even researched the men who wrote about Gowan Pamphlet, John Asplund and Robert Baylor Semple. I didn't stop there, of course, but I will stop there today. You see, because I just kept investigating everyone, because I believed investigating everyone would help me fill in the gaps in Gowan Pamphlet's life. And it did. Well, that's it for this edition of Project Gowan Pamphlet. I am Jan Cooperthwaite. Be sure to check back for future episodes. I've got long hidden secrets I'm just dying to share, and I can guarantee you the best is yet to come. Thanks for watching.